In today's world, providing business class service requires delivering a one-stop service experience. Moxtra powers one-stop customer portals, a digital branch for your business. Our platform can power your branded portal as a standalone web and mobile app, or deliver a digital branch with Moxtra.
Here's to dancing like nobody's watching.
Hi, Zach. We can see you.
Realtor.com, the home of home search.
Welcome back, everybody. It's time for the event you've all been waiting for. The 2021 Housing Forecast led by CAR Chief Economist Leslie Appleton Young and Deputy Chief Economist Jordan Levine. This is your chance to get all the insider info on next year's housing market straight from the experts themselves. Without further ado, take it away, Leslie and Jordan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 Economic and Market Forecast. It's wonderful to see you all here. I wish we could see each other in person, but we will make this work. I think we've all gotten used to our Zoom world. So let me get started. We obviously have a lot of interesting things to talk about. So I will share my screen and start the way I always do with a look at how did we do, right? We want to do a little bit of a report card for myself and my group on what we thought was going to happen in 2020 and what actually did happen. So as a reminder of what happened the year before, 2019, sales were off just slightly. We had a 4% increase in the statewide median home price. It was still below 600,000. Mortgage rates averaged for the year a little bit below 4% at 3.9. Housing affordability, 31% of the households in California could afford to buy the median priced home. And in 2019, GDP grew by 2.2%. And our forecast at that time, and I don't know if you remember, but Pulsenomics came out with a survey that summer that said 100 economists have a consensus that 2020 will see a recession, and it will probably be because of a trade war. There was nothing in it about a pandemic. Anyway, when we looked at 2020 from that vantage point, we saw sales pretty flat, a slight increase, prices appreciating a little bit, 2.5%, mortgage rates down a little, housing affordability tightening just a little, and GDP reflecting this recession mindset of 1.6%. And this is the projection for what actually 2020 is looking like. Resales will be down for the year 4.5%. Median priced home will be up for the year 8.1%. And as if you've been following our monthly data, you know that the last couple of months we have been above 700,000. Absolutely amazing growth. Mortgage rates for the year will average about 3.2%, and we are under 3% for conforming fixed rate loans. Affordability about flat, and GDP down 5%. So needless to say, this year has been a surprise on many, many levels. So I don't want to spend too much time looking in the rearview mirror of the economy, but let me just recap that we had the pandemic, we had the economy going full bore, looked like a great year, January, February, and in the beginning of March, things started to crack. And by the middle, we were looking at lockdowns throughout the country. And when all was said and done, we had about a 5% drop in GDP in the first quarter. And in the second quarter, looking back at an annualized rate, we dropped 32.9%. So a very big hit on an economy where essentially the pause button was hit. And what's really interesting, or one of the interesting things about this strange journey we've been on this year, is just how quickly it has happened. When our most recent memory is of the Great Recession, right, 10, 12 years ago. And at that time, it took about 2 years to have 37 million people file for unemployment insurance. In 27 weeks, we have had almost 62 million people apply. So just a very different experience, a different animal. It doesn't look like any recession recovery cycle that we've ever been in. And as we look at the forecasting that's being done by the major economic, financial, governmental institutions, they look a lot more similar today than when we started kind of looking at this 5 or 6 months ago, when things were just all over the map. But you can see here, obviously, for Q2, everybody is in agreement about what happened. A much stronger increase. Again, these are annualized rates in the third quarter. More gains, but not much more moderate in the fourth quarter. And the drop in 2020 is ranging from a minus 2.6% by Fannie Mae, and the outlier, not even the outlier, but NAR is at minus 6%. So I think the point is that there's not a huge divergence anymore, but there certainly was in the beginning, and there was a tremendous amount of confusion. And what happened immediately was the government went into full bore, how can we provide relief mode. And I don't think we should lose sight of just how important it was. They learned to fight the last war. And what we saw were in March and into April, and especially the CARES Act that was signed by the president on March 27th, really put money in people's pockets. It provided a $1,200 check from the IRS, direct deposited, and it provided a supplemental $600 a week to people that were on unemployment insurance. So, we just had a tremendous amount of support for people that simply lost their jobs through no fault of their own, right? Things just were frozen, if you will. And in terms of monetary policy, Chairman Powell and the Fed have been could not do enough, right? And did it very, very quickly in terms of cutting rates, in terms of indicating that rates were going to stay low, in terms of most recently at the Jackson Hole event, saying that they were going to tolerate more inflation to get unemployment down, buying all kinds of secure mortgage-backed securities, commercial mortgage-backed securities, relaxing regulations. They weren't going to make the mistake of acting slowly, which is what happened during the Great Recession, and they were going to keep the markets liquid. So what they were addressing, what you see in this chart, and these are the unemployment rates for California and for the country as a whole. In February, nationally, we were at a historic low unemployment rate of 3.5%. In April and May, we were at 16.4% nationally. And I'm happy to report that the August number was down to 8.4%. But the amount of pain experienced by this economy, it is very hard to overstate that. And there is no doubt that things have gotten better, right? We are in a recovery. I'm not exactly sure what alphabet letter it is, but we definitely have seen an improvement. But the momentum has slowed, and you can see here in the jobless claims, where we've been kind of stuck for the past 2 months, a little bit above 1 million, a little bit below 1 million. So there's still a large group of people that are continuing to need support. But compared to where we were in April and May, I would give the government high remarks for acting so quickly and so aggressively. Here's just a look at what happened in California, losing 2.4 million jobs in April. And since that time, the increases have been going forward, but we still have a pretty significant deficit there in terms of jobs that we need to work through. Now, I mentioned the recovery. We're seeing that in consumer confidence. The reading in September that recently came out, it was the biggest month-to-month gain that has been seen in 17 years, right? We've really bounded up to over 100, and that's reflecting people's optimism about the future and a little bit more kind of at peace and optimism about where they are right now. And this is really positive because it tends to feed into their behavior. And you can see this in the data for retail sales. In August, we hit all-time highs in terms of consumer spending. So after just essentially falling off a cliff and bottoming out in April, we have really seen consumers come back. And it's very important that consumers do that, because they're about 70% of economic activity is tied to consumer spending. So how they're feeling and what they're doing and what their behavior is clearly something that's very important. What's really interesting about the period we're living in now, however, is just how consumers have changed. And you see here on the screen some of the companies that have just been all-time winners in the last 6 months, because they are, direct delivery, virtual, streaming, whatever it is, they're able to help people survive in a kind of a more of a quarantine type environment. So Amazon, of course, is the huge leader here, but even a company like Peloton, right, that allows you to work out and spin at home has grown by leaps and bounds over the last 6 months, if people have been adjusting to this new environment. On the other hand, as people have been buying more and more online, they have been visiting malls and visiting department stores less and less. This is not a new phenomena. And I think one of the keys to what we're going through now with the pandemic economy is that it has accelerated trends that have been going on for decades, right? So, what we're seeing is not only that consumers want to buy online, but they're also more interested in going to local, smaller stores and specialty stores. Going to these big department stores are no longer the event that they once were. So we're losing just some brands that are very fond to many people, but they simply were not able to make the adjustment. They weren't able to reinvent themselves. Another kind of casualty, if you will, of the change in behavior in how we work is in commercial office space. And some of you may even recognize the CAR building in this side. But what we have seen is a work from home world. Now, will everyone continue to work from home post-COVID when we have a vaccine and people are comfortable being out? Not to the degree they are now, but certainly we will not be going back to back to the way it was. So we are seeing high vacancy rates. We are seeing people not paying on their rent. We are seeing stores closing. And I will say we are also seeing an opportunity, right, to take some of these spaces and perhaps transition them to what we desperately need, which is housing. Well, it's about multifamily. I think one of the real challenges over the last 5 to 6 months is that renters and landlords have not been treated the same way, right? So we have moratorium on evictions, and we have small landlords, and half of all the units are owned by small landlords that are still on the hook, oftentimes for their mortgages. So that has been a disparity, and kind of add on top of that rent control in California, and it's making it increasingly difficult for landlords. You also have the question, when the eviction moratoria are lifted at the end of the year, how many of these renters will have their jobs back and be in a position to pick up and make those payments? So that's another sector that is going to be reinventing itself and really reflecting the stresses and strains in the market. I think one of the most interesting letters I've heard to describe the market has been a K-shaped recovery. And this is just reflecting the fact that this pandemic has not affected everyone equally, right? And we have kind of tech workers and white collar workers that have the option to work from home and are doing just fine. And then we have the minimum wage workers that are typically in high social contact businesses, jobs such as home health care and restaurants and entertainment venues, and they have not experienced this in any way, shape, or form in a good light. Here you can see the data for California in terms of job losses, and at the top of the list there on the right-hand column are accommodations and food, healthcare, retail, arts and entertainment. And then at the other side, professional services, information services, wholesaling, education, real estate have all done well. And you can see it played out when you look at the unemployment rates, which I showed you earlier, and break them out by ethnicity. So Blacks, Hispanics, Latinos, Asians have a different experience in this market, and it plays itself out here. This is a survey that was done out of Harvard, asking households and asking their ethnicity as well, whether they'd used up most of their savings and if they are experiencing serious financial problems. And you can see the disparity in the data there is really hard to ignore. What about the presidential election? This is a question that we get asked every 4 years. And there's no doubt that the election will have an impact on housing, because it will impact the economy, it will impact consumer confidence, it will impact the financial outlook. And there's no doubt that there are wide policy disparities between President Trump and Vice President Biden. What we have seen in the last 4 years under the Trump administration has been not a huge enthusiasm for affordable housing or for the fair housing laws. There's been support for maintaining the kind of strict suburban zoning that appeals to his base. And then we also had a tax cut that really hurt home ownership with the, certainly in California, with the $10,000 SALT cap and the reduction in the mortgage amount. Biden has on his website a housing platform. It commits $640 billion over 10 years. to end redlining, for down payment assistance, to approach comprehensively homelessness, and also to reinstate the affirmatively fair housing rule that was suspended by the Trump administration. And that's the rule that says if a municipality takes money from HUD, they also have to guarantee that they are taking direct action to end any discriminatory housing practices. So there's a lot more to discuss on this. We don't have the time right now, but I just wanted to make a statement about the different policies, but also tell you typically in every election year, things slow down a month or two before the election and heat right back up a month or two after the election. So it's often just the uncertainty that causes people to pause, and really nothing more than that. So let's talk about the California housing market. We do a monthly survey where we ask California consumers, is it a good time to buy and is it a good time to sell? In September, 34% said it's a good time to buy. That's the highest in the 2 years that we have been doing this survey. We have also seen in the last 6 months a huge recovery on the sell side, the perception of whether it's a good time to sell. And we're almost up to the 62% that we had in February. And why is the outlook on housing so bright? Why are we the V-shaped recovery in this economy? Why is real estate leading the way, if you will? And clearly, rates are a huge part of that, right? Rates have really never been lower. Now you have to qualify, right? It's a much more rational underwriting than we've seen at other times in the past. But if you are able to do that, you get an amazing rate. And certainly the refinance activity has been very strong as well. Here's just applications for new mortgages, and we're up nationwide 25% on a year-over-year basis. I mean, that's pretty incredible. The other part is the people that have lost their jobs and are getting hopefully unemployment insurance are not typically the people that are going to be buying houses or are homeowners today. And as I mentioned, and you saw the data earlier, it's really hitting the working class, the minimum wage workers, the people that are in kind of high touch, people intensive activities, right? So that has also kind of insulated the housing market, if you will. So here's just an incredible disparity or disconnect here. The May data for the housing market, which was the first month that you really had a full-blown impact of the lockdown, sales were down 12.9% year to date. They dropped year over year 41.4%. Prices were down 3.7%. And the inventory index was up, right? And not really because inventory was up, but because sales had dropped so much. Look at where we were in August. Year over year up 14.6%, year to date down only 6.8%, median home price up 14.5% on a year over year basis, and a median of $706,900 with only a 2.1 month supply, a drop in inventory of 34%. What happened, right? In 5 months, what happened? I mean, it is, I mentioned a V-shaped recovery. If you look here at the right hand of your screen, you can see January and February were strong, March down, April, May down, June better, and July and August just simply off the charts. And I know I'm not telling you anything you don't know. You're out there experiencing it, but it has really been fascinating to watch. We are seeing increases in sales in every single region of the state. All right. And we are seeing very strong increases today in the upper end of the market. The 1 to 2 million, the 2 million and above has really seen the strongest year over year year over year changes. Now, we knew we were going to see a great summer because pending sales in May and June increased so sharply. The increase in July was minimal, and we actually had a slight decrease in pending sales, our pending sales index, in August. So we know that we are going to see a bit of a pullback, a bit of a slowdown in the fourth quarter. And all you need to do is look at the inventory numbers, right? The inventory is so low, it just can't fuel the market to keep the momentum going. Here's a look at the price side. As I mentioned, we've had August and July with the median home price over 700,000, and we are seeing price growth in every single price category in the market. We do a quintile analysis where we slice the market in 20% pie shapes, if you will. And then even looking at the top 20%, typically the luxury market is way at the end there in the top 5% of any market. And that price growth almost a 35% year over year increase. Again, this is looking at statewide as statewide numbers. Here's that inventory index I was talking about, the ratio of listings to sales. So if the current rate property is selling, we're going to be out of listings in 2.1 months. Active listings are off 50% from last year, right? And a year ago, they were down from the year before. So this is a phenomena that fits my mantra of the pandemic has accelerated existing trends, and this drop in listings again is something that is being felt all over. Now let's take a little bit of a walk around Southern California, Northern California, all parts of California, and just to show you what the market looks like with these wonderful infographics that we have. So here's San Diego, median home price 11.5%, sales up 10.4, and active listings down 46.2. What about LA? Very diverse market, absolutely. Median price up 19.2%. Sales down a little, 4.2, a pretty large base, and active listings down 3.9. How about Bakersfield? This is a shout out to our dear president, Jeannie Radsick. Median home price up almost 13%. Sales down 15. And a lot of that is inventory issues. Active listings down 33% on a year over year basis. What about San Jose? Our president-elect Dave Walsh from San Jose, median price up 19%, home sales off 5.3, and active listings down 40%. Let's kind of look now at the suburban market. Let's look at Chula Vista, right? There's been a lot of talk about people maybe not wanting to be downtown, but out, where there's more space and more room and so on. Median price in Chula Vista at $648, up 11.4. Home sales up a little at 3. Inventory down 54.4%. What about Thousand Oaks, California? Median home price $805, down 5.8. Home sales up 35. Active listings down 74. And what about Pleasanton for our treasurer, Jen Branchini? Median price up 2.6%. Home sales up 22%. Listings down 59. And then I also just want to talk for a minute about resorts. It's interesting how wrong we've all been. There was one of the big national brokers said in May that vacation real estate markets are toast. The pandemic is pushing Airbnb owners to offload their homes. And this really has yet to materialize. What we are seeing is the work from home, work from anywhere environment is creating a new life for many resort and second home areas as people see them not as that, but as a primary residence where they can keep their job. So here, La Quinta, the median price up 44% year over year, home sales up 94%, listings down 26. How about Lake Arrowhead? Median price in beautiful Lake Arrowhead up 16.5%, home sales up over 100%, listings down 71. And what about South Lake Tahoe? Oh my goodness, median price up 20, home sales up, active listings down. So you get the point. And then finally, what about the ultra luxury and here in Newport Beach with home sales up 76%, listings down, median price down just a tad. Carmel, median price up, home sales way up, active listings down, and Hillsborough, median price 4.53 for all our techies there, home sales up 100% and listings down. So it gives you a feel for the dynamics of a market that is responding to not just low rates, but a change in behavior, a change in expectations, a change in how people want to live. Every year we do an annual housing market survey. I just want to show you a few slides from there. First-time buyers, highest in 100 years. Recall this is the survey where we ask realtors about their last closed transaction. And when we asked a first-time buyer that moved to a different county why they moved, fewer said affordability issues, but it was still over a third of them, right? That dropped from 48 to 37%. So still an issue. We also found that investment sales of investment property dropped 11.8 to 8.1%. And we did talk a little bit about investment properties earlier. Vacation sales increased from 4.7 to 6%. And then you can also see this reflected in when we ask about whether you bought an investment property, we asked, did you flip it or did you rent it? Look at the big drop in rent, right? 70 from 82% to 73, more people deciding to flip that property. We also had a big reduction in international buyers this year. And we also saw a significant increase in people saying they changed county for quality of life, which really plays into that story we've been talking about. For sellers that moved, we asked the realtor, where did your seller move? People moving to another state was the most recent low was 19% in 2013. The last 2 years, it has been 30%. And that is a theme, and I know you're all aware of it, of people looking outside of California and moving to other places where there's a perceived affordability advantage. So we've talked about migration a lot. And when we've talked about migration in the past, it's been in conjunction with housing affordability. And I don't need to stress this point with any of you. California's affordability is well below the nation. And as we look at like county by county affordability, what percentage of the households can buy the median priced home, you can see there's only a few counties that are more affordable than the US as a whole. And I had to ask Oscar why Mono County had the lowest affordability, and it has to do with all of the people buying in Mammoth. It was very interesting how they're coming in and buying high-priced homes, but the income of the people that live in Mono County full-time is much lower. So here's the quandary. This is an updated slide I've showed you before, that we have had in a 30-plus year period a big increase in the state's population, an increase in the number of realtors in California, but fairly flat home sales and a big drop in construction. So that is the dilemma that we face. And one of the byproducts of this is that now in California, 46 of our 143 largest cities are already majority renter. In terms of flows, this is really wonderful data from the American Community Survey that Jordan has sliced and diced. So when you look at the San Francisco metro area and where people are moving, they're moving across the bay, they're moving to Sacramento and Sonoma. Those are the top three areas. And then we say, well, where do the people in Sacramento go? And the people in Sacramento go to Nevada, Idaho, Oregon, and Colorado, right? They are going in much larger numbers out of state than staying in state. What about Southern California? In LA, most of the movement is to the Inland Empire and to a lesser extent, Orange County. Where do people in the Inland Empire go? Arizona, Texas, Utah, Nevada, Georgia, and Idaho. That is a affordable housing story. What we are going through today is, in addition to that, the change in consumer behavior, and in addition to that, climate change, which is creating a fire situation in this state that has been unprecedented in our history, and is also creating a situation where people are evaluating where is it safe to live. So the question I leave you with is, where do we go from here? And the answer is, we go home. Here's some pictures of home offices that were posted on Twitter way back when we started doing this. And it's just a way of saying, people are working from home. They're working out from home. They have multi-generational families now at home, and they're schooling their kids at home, and they need different accommodations. And that's really another key factor that's fueling housing right now. A lot needs to be done to make them comfortable. And the fact that we value and see the value of housing more than ever, I think, is one of the silver linings of what we've been through in the last 6 months. So I want to transition right now. And since this is my last forecast, I wanted to just pause and thank my research team, Jordan and Oscar, Samantha, Guillermo, and Georgia, who just make beautiful slides and have the most stunning analytics and beautiful data underlying them. They always make me look so smart and well-informed. And I'm just been, amazed by their brilliance, and they're just absolutely wonderful people to work with. So I wanted to just take a moment to thank them. I also wanted to thank my executive assistant, Paula Green, who has kept me alive for over 30 years. If you've ever had me come out and do a speech, Paula's done all the lead work and so much more. And so many other things. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you, but when I'm out in the field, so many times I have someone come up and say, "Oh my goodness, I got to work with Paula. She's amazing." And I just say, yes, she's absolutely amazing to work with. So thank you, Paula. So at this point, I'd like to transition the forecast over to Jordan. In 1989, I took over from Joel, and I still remember we were meeting at the Century Plaza, and he did the first part of the forecast and then called me up to do the second half, and I was absolutely scared to death. And he was so sweet. And today I want to do that with Jordan. Jordan is our deputy chief economist. He is absolutely brilliant. He's been here almost 5 years, so I know many of you know him, have heard him speak. He's wonderful in person. He does our videos and our dashboards and so many things, and it's just been an absolute delight to work with. So Jordan, I'm going to leave the hard part for you and let you take over. So it's all yours.
Wow. Awesome. Leslie, thank you so much. I bow to the master as usual, and just so incredibly grateful to have been able to work for Leslie and learn from her for the last 5 years, and just so excited to be able to be the lens for you all into this amazing research department that she's put together, for us to enjoy. In terms of the forecast, I think you've heard in Leslie's remarks that there's a lot of uncertainty out there. And so instead of giving you a single point forecast that we could kind of throw out there and know that almost immediately it's going to be wrong, what I want to do is just walk you through some scenarios so that way, given all the wild cards, no matter which way the market goes, you'll be prepared in terms of your business. So we're not going to do that, but we will talk about some of the wild cards. In addition to the election, which Leslie already mentioned, we also have COVID, and the numbers there are looking encouraging, both in terms of the new cases as well as the number of folks that are dying on a daily basis. We've been moving in the right direction for several weeks in a row. Will that continue? I don't know, and that's not an area I'm qualified to make a forecast on, but it will have implications for the housing market and for our business for the rest of the year and into 2021. The other thing is, even as things continue to hopefully move in the right direction as we're forecasting in our baseline scenario, we've still got a lot of healing left to do. Still over 24 million people roughly on one form of unemployment or the other. And so even though things have moved in the right direction from a peak of almost 31 million people, we still, again, have a long road to hoe, still a lot of financial distress out there for Americans. That doesn't mean things won't move in the right direction and won't continue to do so. We believe they will. In fact, if you look at our economic forecast, you could see that we are estimating that when the dust settles on 2020, we will have contracted by about 5%, an average and unemployment rate of about 8.8%. Looking forward to next year, we do think that things will continue to improve, with the economy expanding by 4.2%, but it's going to take a while to get back to quote unquote normal. So we're still looking at an average unemployment rate of a little bit over 7% next year. When we try and think about extrapolating that out to what it means for the housing market, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. One is that we're going to have to eventually grapple with the 4 to 6 million people who either missed or didn't make mortgage payments in full. That could mean as many as 60,000 potential foreclosures here in California, and that will obviously have implications for us in the market. It will have impacts on prices, although we think those impacts in our baseline scenario will be in the single digits, and we're more hopeful this time around. A, the government is on board, but B, we have more strength or less fundamental issues bubbling under the surface. And so when you look at the fundamentals of the mortgage market, as an example, we have a little bit more than a third as much cash out refining where folks were actually draining home equity. So we still have a lot of homeowners who have skin in the game compared to 2005, 6, and 7, where we had almost 3 times as many folks cashing out, at least in terms of dollar values. The other thing is the mortgage products that people have taken out this time around. You can see back in 2005, almost half of all the mortgage dollars originated back during that cycle were in these kind of 5-1 option arms where folks' payments could reset overnight because they weren't covering the full cost of the interest every month. This time around, that was much smaller of a chunk of the marketplace, and you can see that's been consistent for many years running. Household balance sheets are in much better shape with more savings and fewer financial obligations. Both of these are being measured as a percentage of income. And so again, households financially were doing much better than they were back in 2005, 6, and 7, where they were over leveraged. And so today these ratios aren't just at kind of pre-crisis levels, they're at the lowest levels we've seen in many decades. So household balance sheets in good shape. And we also just don't have that fundamentally overheated home price environment. In fact, if you, after adjusting that median price home for current interest rates and turning that into a mortgage payment, you can see that we're basically at historical averages relative to the amount of income that folks make. And that is a big difference from 2005 and 6 as well, where that typical home was consuming almost 75% of that gross income. And so, if you put all of that together, it doesn't mean that we're impervious to the effects of COVID, but it does hopefully mean that the worst is behind us, with home sales contracting by about 4.5% this year, but really robust price growth, up 8.1% to 640,000. We think that will continue, with sales increasing about 3.3% next year and prices growing only 1.3% as we shift a little bit away from that luxury segment down to that kind of owner-occupied market. This obviously assumes that we have a vaccine available sometime during that first half of the year, that we see some foreclosures creep up, but that they stay to less than 8% of all home sales with not much discounting. That being said, we do have a worst case scenario where we don't have a vaccine until second half of next year or later, that we have a kind of second wave of COVID during the winter and into the beginning of 2021 that causes us to shut down, in which case we think that the foreclosure issue will be more significant, not as many folks able to bounce back, and those foreclosures will sell at a bigger discount. If that comes to fruition, it looks like an environment where sales continue to fall this year and continue to fall next year as well, down almost 10%, with roughly 16% impacts to prices. All of that being said, if you compare the impacts that we're talking about this time, they're roughly half as bad in terms of the foreclosure issue, even in our worst case scenario, than we saw last time around. And when we think about California from the long term, I'm still bullish. We still are the 5th largest economy in the world. If we were a standalone country, we have over 25 million people come to the state. We're still a top destination for folks all over the world. We have the top universities, not just in America, but in the world as well. And we're still a hub of innovation where we not just supply agricultural products, but we innovate and invent and sell those products to the rest of the world. And for me, the biggest hope is that we can turn this big challenge presented by COVID and the shutdown into an opportunity to hopefully solve the biggest problem that California's had going into this for a very long time, by being able to put the people where the housing is, and so that more folks can kind of take advantage of home ownership and have those kind of opportunities that, let me be here today to deliver this forecast. So that's where we'll leave it. Thank you so much.